almost coming up on being perhaps within the next 14 seconds live. We are live.
And I guess we should check if we have sound. So if you're out there, please let us know that you can actually hear us this time.
Do we have sound in our hands? Have we harbored audio? I'm gonna go with yes.
Yes, we do. Okay. So today we are there we go. Coming to you with Paradialectic. And today's episode is going to be staying grounded in these crazy times.
How to become and perhaps remain grounded. But my first question, and I am actually asking this first. We do the introductions because I love this. This makes a lot of sense to this. Who are you?
I'm Eric Miller, PhD. So I'm, among other things, a clinical psychologist.
And I am Zachary Winchester, a nonsense man. And but we have our expertise in various realms, and our Venn diagram has some stuff in the middle, but also there's it's a Venn diagram.
Quite a bit of overlap, right? Because I like creating spaces for nonsense and shenanigans as well. So
yes, and today's subject is that of something that I used to not value nearly as much as I do now. I don't know if that means I'm becoming less of a nonsense man, but making sense and keeping one's feet both metaphorically and literally planted in a reality that is shared. I'm getting more into that.
And I think that it's particularly hard because I think a lot of people who have been into it have been finding a hard time doing that given everything going on lately with the COVID and with the politics and with the massive divides in American culture, let alone things in the world.
Yeah, for those of you just tuning into reality, this is the year 2020, and there's been a pandemic. Some have said that it has been the awakening of a 50-year sleep since World War II. That was the last time that people in certain privileged parts of the world have actually had something to all worry about at the same time.
And I think this is part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this today is because we're talking about paradialectics, and so paradoxes, dialectics. And for those who haven't been listened to us before, when we're talking about dialectics, we mean two opposing truths that seem to coexist at the same time within us or within the world. So two things that seem contradictory. And for me, I'm somebody who's practiced mindfulness for quite a while. I used to run a martial arts studio and kind of started with a Zen practice. And when I started teaching it to students, I found that it really helped them overcome their fear or their anger when engaging with sparring or competition or defending themselves. Or what was really hard for a lot of students was actually hitting somebody else. Like, if you're not inclined to hitting other people, it's one of the hardest things in the world to do. I mean, that's kind of what was funny about Fight Club is when Tyler Durden asked everybody to go out and punch somebody on the street. And so this concept of being grounded and being mindful are really connected for me. And what I found is with this practice, I thought I was really grounded, but I had a series of events over the last 2 years and that were magnified by COVID that made me realize, I was grounded in a lot of ways, but some of my grounding was based on the lifestyle I had created for myself. And when that lifestyle was taken away, and part of it was I was really comfortable socializing at events because I worked 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And so I was really good at being social in large groups of people and felt really connected, but I was much less grounded outside of the small group of people I was naturally comfortable with reaching out and being social there. And I'm like, whoa, I thought I was way better at this, way more comfortable than I was. And I realized I needed a new form of grounding.
So what's your definition then? I've had several working definitions of that. The first one was you're in trouble and you're staying locked in your room.
That's right.
And then there was grounded. I would hear it mostly from the hippy dippy starflower community of your sockless feet planted on the green grass of of God's gorgeous earth.
Extend your root chakra down through your feet into the branches, into the roots of the earth, or
the crystal core of the planet.
As one of my favorite Polish burners would say, you've got to open up your asshole chakra. Right?
Yeah. So, and now I hear it said by folks who dabble in objectivity stuff more, and it seems like it's a more grounded term as I'm hearing it now. Meaning, what?
Well, I actually use it a lot because I work, as many of you know, have been listening to the podcast. I work with veterans, and I found that when I came in and I told them I would teach them meditation or mindfulness, as you might imagine, a 30-year combat Marine might not initially be way open to the concept of sitting and navel gazing with crossed legs and his
navel gazing into each other's belly buttons?
No, that's the term for meditation, is you just sit navel gaze. It's kind of like a pejorative term for people who just kind of like float away and disconnect from reality.
Wow, that missed me all these years. I never heard that.
So for me, grounding is I actually combine traditional mindfulness with 2 steps before it and 2 steps after it. So kind of standard mindfulness practice is you sit and you watch your breath. And sometimes this practice is just called just sitting. Yeah. And it's one of the hardest fucking things.
Oh God, I am unskilled at that. You know what? I just remembered though, I have heard the phrase, I'm going to go and contemplate your navel. I've heard that.
Exactly.
Does that really sit and think about your belly button?
Well, where it comes from that there's a few traditional ways if you're doing what's called concentrative meditation to focus. So the most kind of common are the third eye, the tip of your nose, the entrance of the breath in and out of your mouth, your heart, and then the sacral chakra, which is 2 inches below your navel, your belly button. And the reason for this is different people, depending on where they experience awareness, this is getting way into the weeds, but it's kind of fun, is that if people are really up in their head and you experience your consciousness as being in your head or your heart, and there's a lot going on there, it's like the metaphor is if there is a tree in a storm, you don't want to be up in the branches. You want to be down at the base of the tree. So when you bring your awareness down to the navel, down there, for people who don't experience emotion in their gut, it's actually a really peaceful place to focus your awareness. But of course, I often check with people because some people feel their emotion in their gut, that gut feeling, in which case focusing higher up in their body sometimes is a little more peaceful to them.
I saw this lecture, I think it was a TED Talk, where this guy like gives all these really great allegories. And then he's like, oh, I just realized I'm almost out of time. Well, the thing that I wanted to get across was, we think that our consciousness is like, it's in our head. And we're always looking forward. And we're always like seeing it like in the, like in the front of the face. And like, we're always just like, just feeling our consciousness in our front. But try this, like feel it in your back. And it's like, yeah, just that.
Right.
And just do that. It's like, and it is this immediate change. I've had, that bringing awareness there. So with grounding, it's, I didn't mean to just make fun of. Like, I definitely think that there's something to. There was just a time the other day where I was leaving a fire gig at the haunted attraction, and I felt like I'm not really keen on my own working definition of grounded. But whatever the fuck that is, I need some of that before I drive. And I took my bloody shoes off, literally covered in blood. And I put my bare feet on the ground for a period of time before I was like, okay. And that's a thing where I'm very, if you have a real problem, you need a real solution. If you have an imaginary problem, you need an imaginary solution. But there's some of these things that are like bothsies, boths of them. Both of those are going on, where it's like, there's probably something objective to this. I feel it. There's some scienceable stuff maybe about it, but also it changes my awareness state.
Very much so. So actually there's an acting and a public speaking technique where you bring your awareness down to your legs and your feet. And so if you take your shoes off and you put it in the ground and you're actually feeling that difference, because your shoes are like, they muffle the feeling in your feet, because your feet are one of the most sensitive places in your body. I don't know if you've ever seen the sensory homunculus.
No.
So there's your nerve endings are not equally distributed all over your body. And so in science textbooks, there is this crazy little troll-looking homunculus. So if you look up the sensory homunculus, if you guys actually are better spellers than I do on Google, without shutting this off, you will see this crazy little troll guy with huge ears, huge nose, huge mouth and lips, huge hands, quite well hung, and then huge feet, because this is where our nerve endings are most centered. And so when you take your shoes off and you put them into the ground, your awareness immediately kind of goes down to the feet, and it's going to change your consciousness. And this is one of the techniques that I actually work with people on, is showing them that just like you can change your behavior and you can work to change your thoughts, you can work to change how you use your awareness and your attention, and it makes a big difference.
Yeah. I was having this banter with my roommate and good friend AJ earlier today, and because he's a skateboarding boy, and so he gets himself hurt often and accrues injuries frequently.
Yes.
And he was saying, like, man, it would be great if I had the ability to just tell my pain sensors, it's like, all right, I get it. Don't put pressure on that. But I'm just going to watch this movie now, you know?
Right.
And we were talking, like, that would be great. I wonder if we get a row of buttons on our wrist one day where it's like, okay, turn pain off, and let's, like, just give me the signal if I'm doing something that might, like, further injure myself.
So I can actually show you how to do this right now. And I show the audience how to do this right now. So we still haven't defined grounded, which is okay. We're going to get there. But this is... I do this with patients where I'm not concerned that they're going to use physical pain as a way to, like, they're going to carry this over into hurting themselves. So I do a whole bunch of checks for this. I can't do this over the internet, so I'm going to trust you guys are going to be okay. But I want you to take a piece of your skin and find the most painful point that you can imagine on your arm, and then pinch it to the point that animal part of you, that emotional part of you, starts to, like, swear internally and be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why the fuck are you? Do you feel that? Yeah. And then go ahead and let it go. And notice how that kind of feels emotionally in your body to have done that. Like, what do you kind of notice?
I've done a lot of things like that before. Whenever I get in any kind of needle or I'll pinch the shit out of myself, to put the pain somewhere else. So it's not a rarity of me to be doing that. But there's the big relief whenever pain or pressure is relieved. It's like, oh, thank God.
But what was it like when you kind of had that more animal reaction to it?
It takes my attention.
Right. So here's the thing I'd like to try next. So this time I'm going to ask you to pinch yourself again, but this time I'd like you to be curious. So imagine that the word pain doesn't exist, but you can still kind of see it, and then be curious about the sensations underneath the pain. The tingling, the pressure, the feeling of electricity. What happens? What changes?
Electricity is the big thing that gets across. Yeah, when I don't think of it as pain, or I don't think of it as the sensation of pressure pinching my arm, it's just this buzz, it's this signal.
Right. And so when I'll do this sometimes when I would teach at Eastern in person, and I'd have a class of 30, 40 people, and I'd see people, like, almost like they're trying to, like, kickstart a motorcycle, and, like, they're really pinching because the pain drops off that dramatically. And this is just this idea of, instead of approaching the pain with what we call judgment or reactivity, you become, which is like basing off of an old idea of what pain is, you bring a sense of curiosity to it. So here's another way to do it. So what most people normally do is when they have pain, they try to distract. So it's kind of what you did, but you also did something else. You took control of something that was uncontrollable. So part of what's bad with somebody else hurting you, like a needle, is the sense that you don't have control over it.
Oh, yeah.
So if you pinch somewhere else, you're like, well, at least I have control over this. And somehow it feels better psychologically, right? But so the flip side of this is, I guess the challenge is when we try to distract, it's almost like we go to sleep, we wake up, and for a moment we forget we have a problem, like our car got repossessed, or we're getting kicked out of our apartment, or we just lost somebody. And then we wake up and we realize, oh, that's still real, and then all that pain hits you again.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge with distracting, is you're trying to somehow pretend that this pain in your life isn't there, but you eventually have to stop expending effort to distract, and now you're exhausted because you've been expending effort and the pain's still there. And this is the problem with like using drugs to cover up pain and alcohol to cover up pain and being a workaholic to cover up pain, is when you're done, that pain is often still there if it wasn't initially temporary.
Yeah, and there's emotional pain that really compounds with time. There's things that and then this is like the metaphor of I wish I could turn the pain signals off. It's like I'm aware. Sometimes I'll become aware of something that is like, until I change this in my life, it's going to keep bugging me.
Yes.
And for me, it's this thing that I know I'm capable of that I'm just not doing yet because it's difficult and it requires discipline across time. And that's difficult for me. I have this thing with attention. There may be an acronym for it, but like I have a very, very difficult time having a point of focus, and maintaining that is incredibly difficult.
And actually, I really do too, and so I had to go through a lot of tricks and hurdles to finish 7 years of grad school. Because for me, sitting in an office or a cubicle in front of a computer for 7-8 hours at a time is one of the most difficult and painful tasks that you can imagine. But we'll kind of get to that. I want to do one more thing with the pain here, is that there's another way to approach this. Okay. So I'd like you to go ahead and do the pinch again.
God, you're really fucking making me masochistic.
Right. And then go ahead and just kind of like dig into it till it really hurts. Okay. But this time I want you to continue to be aware of it, but also be aware of your knees, both the ends of your knees and your ears within the headphones, and the other elbow and your little toe all at the same time. So broaden that awareness out.
It lessens the pain.
Right. And it seems like it's a cheap trick, right? It seems like it's like just a trick, but it's not a trick. It's literally what happens when we use our attention in a different way. When we narrow our attention down to a pain, whether it's emotional or physical, in response, that pain takes up more of our awareness. When we judge it, we oppose ourselves to it like we're fighting it, and then that brings up adrenaline, and that brings up sorrow or unfairness or unjustness or anger or frustration. And what's that going to do to your level of suffering?
Wait, which one? Disperse it or
don't give me the right answer. So give me the answer that's true for you. So if you have pain, physical pain, and you get mad at that pain, and you begin to curse the world, and you curse the pain, and you curse the fates, do you feel less total distress in your consciousness?
Yeah, no, that is what initiates the total distress. Yeah, there can be.
Exactly. So is that kind of being overwhelmed? So in acceptance commitment therapy, we talk about the difference between clean pain and suffering.
I'm very interested in that topic of clean pain. That's that's a metaphor to an actual physical injury, I believe,
or emotion either.
But I heard you say the analogy of like, so you break a bone, and you take say opioids for like during the healing. There's an amount of pain that you almost must feel in the healing process, and that's
okay. So yeah, let's kind of walk back a little bit. So let's kind of come back to the pinch, which is simple and practical. So when I put that pressure on myself, like right now, because I'm naturally broadening my awareness and I'm naturally curious, like I'm not really feeling any there. I got a little bit of discomfort there, but it's really slight. So this is what we call clean pain or clean experience. It's a little bit unpleasant, but until I start to become reactive, until I start to go, this is wrong and I shouldn't have this, that's what brings up the unnecessary suffering. Mm-hmm. But the same thing could be true if we kind of magnify out. So I think what you're talking about is, let's say that I have a bad back, and I often do have a bad back. I have a bad neck. I have migraines. I have an autoimmune disease that sometimes really hurts. So when I take a painkiller for that, I feel better for a little while, but here's the thing. All medications have what's called the opponent process. And this is why we get addicted to fast-acting drugs, but not slow-acting drugs. So antidepressants, SSRIs, they're not addictive in the same way that coke or heroin is, right? Because coke and heroin, they shoot your body up really quickly, and they drop it down really quickly. So what does your body do when it's too hot?
It sweats.
Right. What do you do when your fluids are getting low? You get thirsty. that your body's always trying to find homeostasis, and you literally have dozens and dozens of mechanisms to find that homeostasis. So if your body has, let's kind of like stay really calm about it. If you have coffee, you have caffeine, your body goes, whoa, we shouldn't be this excited. Like it, but no, this can't happen. So when the caffeine kind of spikes up your adrenaline, your body goes, we have way too fucking much adrenaline here. So it's going to start to naturally kick in opiates that bring your body back down sooner than the caffeine naturally leaving your body. And what it does is the more that you have coffee, the more it starts to anticipate where you're going to drink coffee. So I know that since I'm addicted to coffee, I don't wake up as tired as the average person who doesn't drink coffee. I wake up a little more tired. And when I have my first cup of coffee, because the opponent process is already there anticipating them to have coffee, it just brings me back to normal. And so the problem here is with opiates, when you take something that's going to relieve physical pain, your body actually stops producing its own opiates and tries to kick in the opposite chemicals in your body. So you actually become more sensitive to pain. So you're more irritated, more irritable, more anxious afterwards. So when we try to distract from real life pain, whether it's emotional or physical, we tend to do things that actually will make it worse over time. So two types of unnecessary suffering, the judgment and the cursing, and then the things that we do to distract that take attention away from what's really important to us in life.
Back to the imaginary problems need imaginary solutions, and real problems need real solutions. Like you got a broken bone. You gotta set that bone. There's some real stuff that you're gonna have to do to that in order for that to get better. And then if you have an imaginary problem, sometimes it's like I see myself and others try to apply a real solution to an imaginary problem, and that can be just as much of a miss. I struggle for an analogy of that. Well, I would say you got something that's very much psychological. It's very emotional. It has to do with something that you would need to do different, or some relationship that you would need to heal or something like that, and you're just doing stuff to make your body feel better, and you're doing things that have an objective result on your physiological doings, but you're not hitting at the thing, which is very much like something in the mind, something that needs to be communicated to yourself about yourself.
And so what you're really talking about is being ungrounded. So I think that brings us back to what grounding is. So being ungrounded, so what are the ways that we get ungrounded? I think the main ways we get ungrounded is we get caught up in our thoughts and feelings in a way that's separate from what's really going on around us in the world. So whether that's self-criticism, whether that's criticism of other people, whether it's imagining that all people of the opposite political persuasion are evil and looking to destroy you, and that all the people of your political persuasion are under attack and need to be defended. Like the more that but the room that you're in, the neighborhood you're in, the community that you're in, people are getting along. Like you still go to work. You're like that we're kind of losing contact with what's really happening.
Yeah, I don't experience the things that I often like. You'll hear me complain about, like, oh, there's so much this, and it's like, well, not really around me so much.
Right.
Not really. This entire since the initial lockdown experience, I have not been face to face with a lot of the elements that seem like they're taken over often. I have actually very congenial, very courteous interactions with most of my interactions.
But here's the thing: it doesn't mean that those things that you're afraid of happening aren't actually happening out in the world.
Yeah.
But if you're always responding as if it's happening in the room with you,
yeah,
your body and your mind and your life and your peace and your ability to actually affect change with those things is pulled away. Because if you're it's almost like if you always had a fire alarm going off in your house because you believed it kept you safer from fires, you're going to be so exhausted that you're probably going to actually leave the burner on the stove and the hairdryer going because you have the fire alarm going 24/7, and it's not meant to operate that way. It makes you less safe to be panicking and upset about things that aren't right in front of you that you're dealing with.
Yeah, does anxiety always come from somewhere?
And that's an interesting question. So I want to come back to that. So what maybe the best way to experience grounding is to actually do it because it's always available and it's actually pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an exercise I'll walk people through, and you can do this for like half an hour, but you can also do it in like 20 seconds. And that's what we're going to do. So the first step is to simply pause and then take a deep breath, but notice all your thoughts and feelings and the fact that we're doing a radio show and everybody at home can do this with us. But you go ahead and pause and say that silently to yourself. And what you're pausing is you're pausing the stream of thoughts and feelings through you. And what you're going to do is like you're tuning in an old school radio, tune in to like 2 or 3 deep breaths. Okay, then from this point, just kind of notice what that feels like and the fact that we don't always pay attention to just that physicality of breathing. And then from here, just kind of allow yourself to breathe naturally. So we don't have to breathe in any particular way, nothing like that. And from this point, just go ahead and take a moment and pay attention to the feelings in you, the feelings in your mood. And just instead of identifying with it, saying like, I am anxious or I am pissed or I am relaxed, just kind of go, just describe it. I'm having the feeling of. And in a way, that's kind of describing it as something temporary. I'm having the feeling of anxiety or ennui. And then notice your thoughts. And don't notice each individual thoughts, but just notice how fast your thoughts are moving. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how fast are they? And then notice their quality. Are they curious, active, self-conscious, observant? And then notice your body and notice that in a very, very real way, you're actually physically here right now. You've got weight, you feel air on your skin, and that this is real in a slightly different way than the content of the thoughts and feelings. And then from here, go ahead and notice your breath again. And without forcing it, allow your breath to become a little slower and a little deeper, up to the point where it's comfortable for you. Where there's a nice balance between being alert and relaxed. And what you might notice is that your mind is starting to go all over the place. And maybe you notice some judgment about your mind going over the place. And notice that that's completely okay, because that's what our mind does. So as long as we're just observing it in the present moment, we're still being present. And just bring your mind back to your breath after you've noticed your mind being wandering.
And breathe as normal as possible.
Just allow yourself to breathe in a way that feels normal, which is different than trying to be normal. So we're not done yet, so kind of keep staying with it. Now here's the fourth step, and this is kind of something that is not in every mindfulness activity. Notice what your thoughts and feelings wanted you to do. Notice where your mind wanted your attention to go. It's almost like your thoughts and your feelings had their own opinions. But maybe when you're grounded, you notice that maybe you could step back and get a different perspective on things. And then here's the final step. From that more grounded place, what's actually important or effective right now? And does it line up with those thoughts and feelings and what they wanted? So what was that like?
I try to avoid statements, but as an intensely attention, not deficit, but overload person, or as they say, ADHD, that thing of trying to, it's an immense effort to try to become thoughtless or slow down. I did achieve it at times.
Did I ask you to become thoughtless or to slow down?
No. But to not be following every. I experience my thoughts as tentacles that are shooting out.
And that's
roots,
the thing.
You know?
So this is really important. That's part of being mindful.
That the tentacles are shooting,
and that you're just stepping back and realizing that you can observe that happening. You don't need to stop it.
Yeah, I like to think, don't let them, like the tentacles can fly, just don't let them attach and
no,
coil.
They're going to attach. They're going to attach from time to time. So this is the really important thing about grounding, and why a lot of times like meditation has been taught for so long that it's either A, relaxation, or B, this like complete like stilling of the mind, or C, this pathway to perfect enlightenment. And I think all of those can be distractions from noticing what is really happening in our mind. So what you're describing here is what's sometimes called the monkey mind or the puppy mind, which is our mind is not trained. We're not taught to look at our attention as something that we control. We're kind of taught that if we're bored, I have to find something interesting. And if I'm excited, my mind's going to jump all over the place. And if I'm in pain, my attention is going to focus on that, or I need to distract from it. Like we're taught that we're kind of at the mercy of our attention. And what we're trying to do, in that we are our attention, what we're trying to practice here is notice that just because our mind wanders, it's kind of like a puppy wanders. Mm-hmm. Of course it's going to wander. That's what puppies do. All we're doing is practicing calling that puppy back to us in a way that is good for us and the puppy. Like, we're not yanking the chain back and pushing the puppy to the ground next to us. We're not doing like puppy abuse with our mind. We're not taking our mind and forcing it back. But we know that that puppy is going to go and explore, and in a way it's kind of cute. And even when it tears up the couch, it's kind of cute too. We just kind of call it back, maybe a little more firmly when it tears up the couch. And then we just get it used to sitting next to us.
Mm. Kind of like the don't call it pain, just call it a sensation. I do have invasive thoughts sometimes, and if I just can stop myself and that's a fucking doozy, shit. Did that come from me? That to just be like, whoop, oh, look at that one. Wow. I wonder who said. Somebody said Duncan Trussell, but maybe he was quoting somebody else. He was like, to see your thoughts when they come up in meditation as like you see a majestic animal in the woods, and like oh, it appears. Look at that. Oh, neat. You know?
Right. You got it. So then you asked a question before we did the grounding, which was it was about anxiety. So
does anxiety always come from somewhere? Because I'll have the anxiety, mm-hmm. and sometimes. Or like my sister was having an anxiety attack once, and I felt that it was.
I actually stopped by.
Yeah. That was, and I was just telling her sometimes I'll just suddenly have these little bits of advice, like I know things in situations like that where somebody else is having the crisis. I was like, you gotta like, this I probably wasn't being as good and calm as you, but it was like if you think of thoughts, anything that comes up, you're gonna frame it in the anxious. As a scary thing. So it's like, as much as you can, that to me always seems like I need to reel that in, because if I think of something in my life or anything, I am going to think about it in the most terrifying concept, because all what I'm doing is fear, is worry. I'm a worry factory. You present me with a subject, and I'm going to make that what's scary.
And here's the thing. I have a complete tendency to do this as well. I mean, they say that psychologists go into psychology for the things they're bad at. First of all, I think that's kind of BS, because everybody's got these things. But like, if we follow that thread, I am actually really bad at staying present. Like, it's really hard for me. In fact, I remember my friends in middle school commenting to me about how much I was in my head instead of being present. And I am very much prone to worry, and I have lots of energy in me. So like, my mind loves to like think of things when I go to bed. So mindfulness and grounding to me have been immensely powerful. And I also have chronic pain in helping me be so much more present and engaged in my life, even with difficulties. And you asked the question, does anxiety come from somewhere? And something that really kind of struck me is I kind of alluded to, like, in the last 2 years, some things have happened in my life that brought up like some really old pain for me. So I kind of equate sometimes trauma like a car crash. Like, if you are in a massive car crash, there are going to be injuries that you can see and injuries that you can't see. And it doesn't matter who you are or what you know or how many weights you've lifted. If you're in a car crash, you're going to have pain, and it's going to take you a while to heal, right? Mm-hmm. And same thing with trauma. It doesn't matter whether you're a yoga instructor or you're a holy person or you're a therapist or you are normally the most chill person on earth. When you have something emotionally traumatic happen, it's going to be like that car crash, and it's going to hurt inside. And sometimes those feelings heal. Some feelings move through us very quickly. So have you ever listened to other mindfulness meditation?
Yeah.
So they'll often say like, watch the emotions flow through you like waves.
I used to do the waking up with Sam Harris.
Okay, yeah. So you often hear the let emotions move through you like waves. Well, here's the thing. The more deeply you've been hurt or shocked on a like neurological, emotional level by life, the more likely those emotions aren't just waves, they're tides or maybe even seasons. And so some emotions, some thoughts are going to flow through you very quickly and very easily. And some emotions, and they will be there for minutes. Some emotions are going to be there for days. I remember there was a time where someone did something that threatened a project that was really important to me, that they only wanted to communicate by email, but they communicate really poorly by email. And I realized if we kept talking by email, we were only going to get into a fight, and they weren't going to be in a position where they could talk face to face for 3 days. But the entire time, this project that was really important to me was threatened. So for 3 days, when I sat down and I practiced meditation, I was sitting down with anger. That because that anger was about something I cared about, when I was sitting there, like anger was like sitting right next to me. And once I talked to them, there was still anger there, but at that point, it started to fade. And I found that with what's happened in the last 2 years, it brought some pain up that happened back when I was 19. And for me, that emotion was almost like a season. And I feel like that season is now clearing, but it took a year and a half where I was objectively I was kind of in pain a little bit every day for like a year and a half. But grounding kind of helps you make room for that clean pain in its own time. And I kept my life going and enjoyed life and traveled and kept my job. And I think for me, this is what grounding is about. That regardless of your circumstances, you can learn how to make room for the humanity in life that's happening in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I often find that a lot of my worry is forward and backward in time, and that there is a way to just get in the room, and then the room usually isn't so spooky. Oh my God, there's some silly commenting. You're abusing my mind. Okay, that's not necessary. See, you don't always have to read the goddamn comments. Sometimes they're fucking silly. Traction.
Okay, sorry for those temporary broadcast problems.
Yeah, it happens. It's streaming. Remember, we are streaming. So the opposite of grounded, I feel like I really got that in September to the point where it was a crisis for me. Because I was very much dissociated from the difficult connections in my life, I would say. Which I feel like family is like, you can have a really great situation with your family, but they're just so good at irritating the fuck out of you. Mm-hmm. That's almost like and I can get playful with that of like, oh, that's our job to each other, you know. Mm-hmm. We're supposed to, and then that's their, like, it's playing on hard mode. And then there's people who don't. I've been like, anger has not been a big thing for me since I was like a teenager. Mm-hmm. There was a good decade of that not being a big thing in my life. Like it would only be like in like romantic situations where I was really vulnerable to someone, like then it could happen. And I just kind of didn't find myself in a place where anyone was like angering me. Just this irritation happens. And I man, that is a really difficult one to change that state once that momentum is going. Like once I have like let it rip and I like say shout at somebody or just like get to that point, it's like that is a difficult one to disengage from. But it is possible. I've seen it done. I've definitely done it myself. And And is that grounding from something that's not in the room to getting into the where you are at that moment?
Very much so. I mean, I think that's the concept here. And I mean, what we're talking about is in this point in time, we have so many things that have changed that I think people have built in their life to keep their life going in a normal way, that we got used to how we'd go to work. We got used to how we interacted with people. And when all of these things get disrupted, we get more and more pulled away from our present moment and how to react to things. And it makes it difficult to come back to the here and now. And when you can, like, this is the only place where your life happens. And I mean, that sounds kind of cheesy, but we often think that we need to fix and spend a lot of time changing the emotions and thoughts in us. But how many hours do we sometimes get caught up in that worry or that rumination or that attempt to change our mood that just takes up so much time? Mm-hmm. Whereas if we actually kind of identify, what's important to us and how we want to live, like, to me, this is the purpose of being grounded, is it allows us to come back to identifying what's really important to us. Because what we're saying here is this isn't about getting rid of all pain and negative emotions. This isn't about getting rid of all unpleasant thoughts. It's about noticing when we are making our unpleasant emotions and thoughts worse through no fault of our own, just through the things that we've been taught. Like, we've been taught if you focus on it and think positive, like, all of a sudden you're going to feel great. Well, that works sometimes, but it doesn't work all the time. So notice when it works and still do that. But when it doesn't work, maybe it's about actually engaging in something physical and working towards something you care about.
Yeah. Yeah, we engage in a lot of communicating and commiserating, thinking about things in a way that is totally theoretical and not pragmatic. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing happens in our lives a lot, where there's something you can do to move the needle a lot of times, and we're not doing that. We're just kind of putting a bunch of language around this thing, and not just what's the interacting with the field. Mm-hmm. There's some things for me that I really think I'm going to need to do something in order to stop feeling that. Change the situations in my life.
So I think the good point here is that once we kind of view this as, we're not trying to get rid of these things necessarily, our wandering mind, these emotions, these thoughts, these feelings, and we can start to make room for them. And I think this is a phrase that's really important. So kind of like when we did the pinch, we brought into awareness, we made room for that pain, and in contrast, the pain didn't feel that big. And the same thing here is that even though that I had some pain in my kind of daily life for a while, that when I kind of opened up and I made room for that feeling, that I had room to kind of go on in my life and act on all of the things that were valuable to me, separate from the pain. But when we focus on getting rid of something, we make our life about fighting something, our life becomes about that thing. So the more I tried, like when I have a migraine, I try not to have a migraine. What am I doing? I'm sitting, I'm laying in a dark room. I stop doing anything that involves effort. But if I'm in that dark room and I'm not doing anything, what's the one thing I have to pay attention to? My migraine, right? But when I kind of realize, okay, when my migraine's really bad, maybe I do need the dark room, but maybe 70% of the other time, I can still be doing what I love. I can still be doing my classes. I can still be lightly working out. It hurts. It's unpleasant. Maybe I don't work out the way I would if I didn't have a migraine. But by keep going, I'm going to have the pain I would have anyway. But I'm also have so much other stuff in my life. It's so much richer. And so this brings us to a concept of why be grounded. I think it's two things. One, to have a sense of wonder and curiosity about what's going on around you, which is kind of the being mode of things. And then two is to express yourself in the world based on what you want to build and cultivate, which is the doing side of things. And I think this is the kind of the beauty of whether it's mindfulness in a practical way or this groundedness, is that it allows you to, like, even in a pandemic, I've really enjoyed my backyard. I've really enjoyed this house. I've really enjoyed, like, the fact that we're doing a podcast. And even though I don't get to do the things that I would have been doing at this time had we not had a pandemic, being at Burning Man or helping with Theater Bazaar, like, I've enjoyed different things just as much. And that's about, I think, so that other part of grounding is adaptation. When we're really connected to what's really happening, that's the only way we can actually adapt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been admitting to myself more the things that that are when I'm not all right about things, but also the same things have been ever present for the last 6 months, and some have been growing nearer and ratcheting up. And there's times where I feel entirely all right with that. I am flustered often with just the state of social insanity, and I get really irritated with humans, and I get and then other times there's both an extremity of, like, I want to get all the human chatter and noise, like, out of my experience, and, like, go fucking be in the mountains until people calm the fuck down. And then other times where I feel super isolated and like I could really use a hug, you know. It does help to say, and this, there's been a lot of really honest moments. I feel like a lot of people have had this where it would just be like, this is a weird time. This is a rough time. When people say weird or this is rough, and it's like, yeah, and people will just share, like, yep, I've got some ancillary, just some suffering that I'm aware of that is near me, and also some very intense things on my plate. And yeah, look at what's going on. This is a weird time.
Right. And it is a weird time. And I think that's it, is that I think our habit is to get caught up in social media. And part of the reason why we started this podcast, that I think you and I both noticed what a divisive, argumentative, like, getting divorced from people's normal values sort of conversations people were having on the internet. And I think that getting lost in social media is one of the perfect examples of being ungrounded. And I think it's causing people to unground from who they would be in public if they were in front of another person. Like, do you actually talk to other people in this way? Yeah. Is this how you are?
I think it makes those thoughts that I don't know if you would call it your invasive thoughts, but you're like, some of the worst thoughts that people are having now have receipts and exist that are publicly viewable, possibly forever. And I feel like a lot of these things, like I stopped Facebooking at a certain point, and all that stuff, all that brain chatter still happens, but I end up in less adversarial exchanges, where it's just like, how eloquently can I say fuck you?
Right.
And just less of these, because I have the manic thing go on quite a bit, where it's like, oh man, I've found that, and then I'll unleash some paragraph, and then I'll look at that later, and it's like, that's embarrassing, and
right.
Yeah, it's all happening. But yeah, when you exist too much in this, when this is your fucking reality. Oh, thank God, no, my phone is within reach. Okay, great. I'm setting up more like in having boundaries for myself for my phone.
Mm-hmm.
Because how ungrounding that is. And I notice this a lot, no judgment to, like, myself and several of my friends. I don't know, maybe I do it less. But the moment I can tell when somebody is going into an uncomfortable thought, or is just, and then, you reach for that, and it's like, it's immediately, it's this soma.
Get that dopamine rush, literally. I mean, this was called like a dopamine addiction. And I've heard people are doing the dopamine fast thing, where they actually spend the weekend without their phone, where they just don't touch it, and they don't watch TV, and they don't drink or do drugs, and they just allow themselves to get back to that normal level of dopamine that they would have in an average life without all the stimulation. So when we're talking about ways to get grounded, I think things like physical exercise are a great way. That and one of the comments here is that you're getting buff, so it looks like
Fuck off.
you might be doing that.
Okay, thank you. Fuck off.
And the other thing is, like you said, getting out of the woods. So the other day I had a 3-day weekend. And as I mentioned to you, like I teach an online class. It turns out that all of my lectures just stopped working. So I had to record a whole bunch of lectures. And I realized I was about to spend my whole weekend on the computer. So I got the lectures done that I needed to do. And I just made myself get out and go out to the Brighton Rec area, get on my mountain bike. And it was a beautiful, stormy, like fall, leaves hitting me in the face as I'm riding down the trail. I go down the wrong trail. It was like the Black Diamond Trail. Go over my handlebars.
Oh, great.
Oh, it was good stuff. But it was so grounding to me.
Yeah.
Because so much of what I do is intellectual and emotional. I found that if I don't work in my garden, if I don't have all these plants that you can't see behind us here, if I don't get out on my mountain bike and go camping, that it's harder for me to like really to be myself. And it's something I always encourage people around me to do. And I love my friends who kind of get that, whether it's that yoga or that sauna or that just kind of like hanging with people where it's not about anything exciting. These things are all, I think, naturally grounding. Pets are naturally grounding.
Yeah, I find that the nature bathing, the thing that happens is that you get away from right angles and you go where everything is unapologetic chaos, and that calms the chaos in my mind. Just seeing that it's like it's going everywhere, just the way branches are, and
Right.
and so as soon as I can get somewhere where I'm in a 360, so I went to Kensington yesterday, yeah, and I had this experience of I couldn't get far enough from humanity. And I kept trying to go deeper into the woods, and at some point, like I didn't hear the cars anymore. But then there was fucking helicopters and jets and distant alarms, and I was like, "Fuck!" Like I don't hate humanity, but right now I kind of do. Get the fuck away from me! I'm trying to be alone in the woods with the citharism. That's the sound of the wind through the trees.
Oh, that's one of my favorite things in the entire world, by the way.
Yeah, I love and during the autumn, the slow trickling of these symbols of inevitable death, the leaves, like I
Very
just
pretty,
love
very
that. Very,
colorful
very pretty
symbols
death, very
of
beautiful.
death.
And I couldn't achieve it. I never got to a point where I wasn't hearing human stuff, and it made me so angry.
So I got something to get you caught up in your head with emotions, which is I actually had the experience for the first time in my life, because I've never been to a sensory deprivation chamber, of like almost complete silence. So I went out to Arizona and northern Utah a couple weeks ago, and ended up going to this Burning Man like oasis out there. This wonderful woman, Kismet, had been building this property for like 20 or 30 years, and it had all of these structures on it. And there was a few people that were inside of a house, but I just went outside of the house to where they had these. They had this like Native American cabin type structure. I don't know the proper name for it. I would butcher it if I tried. They had this kind of like temple house sort of structure. And I went out, and it was truly the deep desert. So she had 80 acres, but the edge of her 80 acres looked like it was like the edge of my front lawn. And I have like a half acre double lot in Hazel Park. So that the amount of emptiness around me was vast, and it was almost impossible to see any other human structure. And when the wind stopped, there were no insects, and there was just absolutely no noise. And it has got to be one of the most amazing experiences that I've had, one of the most unique experiences that I've had in years. It was pretty damn impressive.
I found one of the most peaceful places can be when you ride out to the trash fence at Burning Man and actually turn around where you can see the whole city just as just as this amorphous fucking vortex of humanity, and you hear the different cacophonies of the music and maybe even some human voices, but you're just, if you're far enough away from it, it's like, whoa, it's somehow I'm able to achieve that peace of like going out in the middle of the woods there. Not this year though, but the nature bathing thing that I don't understand how people can maintain sanity not having that on a regular basis. Like,
and there's actually a lot of research that shows that when people are around nature more, like there's so many things that are better with their health and mental health. Like their blood pressure is lower, they're less irritable, they sleep better. All of these things, like we're literally, our body was designed to be in those places. And I think that people just, they somehow, I think we get so caught up in daily life, and we get so caught up in our habits that we don't realize just how important that is.
Yeah, I don't know. I can handle maybe 3 days in New York or Chicago, and it's this buzzing, and it's this, yeah. I guess I applaud and am impressed by those who can handle that. It's like I cannot handle that. Just the, I don't know, the we take things a little slower around here. And I've been finding myself wanting less stimulus, more and more. And we just had that period of time where the quarantine for me was being allowed to not, and to be grounded in silence. Never let myself be grounded in silence for long.
And so, what was that like for you? What did you find? Because I think this is what a lot of people found, is that I think, and I found that with myself, that I'd kind of built up a certain level of distraction in my daily life. And here you are, and here we are, that those habits, those go-tos, whether it's going to get food or going to events, we don't have that anymore. So what was different about kind of sitting with that silence for you?
It was mostly enjoyable, particularly at first. And some of a lot of the same problems come up. The feeling that I'm supposed to be doing something, it's probably the most pervasive, invasive, troubling emotion that I have. That is the bane of my existence is I could do more, and I should. And maybe that sometimes leads me to actually doing something. For the most part, not. It just makes me kind of writhe around uncomfortable. The things that make me actually do the things that then please this tyrant in my mind that wants me to, do something right, or, become my potential sort of thing. But when I actually launch into doing that, it's not usually from the self-shaming or external shaming. I just do it. It's just because I get excited and I want to do it. But so during the quarantine, there was a lot of real deep comfort and really interesting things of watching my ambitions change and some fall away. I really don't think I ever got so much where I could actually say I don't know if I want to be well known or I don't know if I want I think that there is a limited audience that I would like. I don't think I'm there yet, but I definitely don't want the cacophonousness of other consciousnesses observing and commenting on me, and that already annoys me sometimes at whatever this level is. I just there were some things that I thought I wanted from the world or from my life that I saw I really like solitude and peace a lot. Maybe I am striving for that.
Right.
Maybe what I want is my compound out in the mountains where I can broadcast out when I'm feeling social and mostly just exist.
Right. So, and how is that different from where you're at before? What did you think you wanted more of before?
I was a helpless addict to attention and some of it probably was validation, but really it was just this mission. I'm supposed to take this as far as I possibly can, and frustration when it's not working. I've always been, since I was a very small child, I've always had little fads and obsessions that come up, and it's oh, no, that's what Zach is obsessed with, and whether it was this superhero or this Ninja Turtles or Star Wars or something like that. It's oh, he's dressing up as that and he's completely obsessed with that and he wants to, be in that realm all the time. And then, puberty hits, and then it's about this maybe centers around a person and then for a long time it's been dominated by the general idea of I'm going to be a artist, communicator, entertainer, philanthropist, fucking messiah, whatever, like, the thing is and there wasn't much listening to myself and my immediate grounded needs of like, what does Zachary want today? Like, what would make Zachary happy right now? And I noticed that not a lot. Not really. It doesn't actually take much.
So kind of back to the grounded piece, and I think the grounded piece, like what you're kind of talking about, like that artist side of a person. I know this because this is something that's really powerful in me, and I think that if people are watching and they're our friends, there's a good chance that there's this creative side of them. And there's a phrase that I came up with because I kind of had the same problem that you had, which is, how do I do something consistently where it's unpleasant, or here's the worst part, boring to me. Like martial arts was something I did every day, but this like, whoa, I'm doing martial arts. And like, this is like, there's so much energy here and I'm fighting people and doing stuff and facing my fears. So that wasn't so hard to do that every day. But again, sitting down in grad school and writing paper after paper after paper and studying article after article, and then going home and doing my bills, and then like cleaning my apartment and doing my dishes, like that to me for a long time was absolute hell. And I came up with a term that was really powerful for me, and it was mundane badassery. Mm-hmm. It was this idea that like, if I lived 200 years ago, like that was your daily life. Like it took you like 3 hours to kill the thing, like clean the thing, chafe the wheat, whatever you do with wheat, and like knead the dough and make your meal. And you were so exhausted by making the meal, and then you pretty much had to go out and start the next one, right? That daily living was about keeping yourself alive. Like we had this immense luxury to be creative all the time, or so much of the time. We had this immense luxury to sit down and watch other people's creativity on Netflix, right? So to actually sit down and do something over and over again, that takes a level of, for our kind of artistic, creative, spoiled selves, it takes a level of badassery if that's not our nature, right? If you weren't born to be an accountant, you weren't born to be an engineer, those activities of daily living can be really hard. And then how do you ground into that? And for me, it was just realizing and connecting to the fact that these things nourish my life, and they nourish the things that I care about. And it removes this idea that what we do should be enjoyable every step of the way, that oftentimes the things that are most satisfying are those things that we sacrifice for along the way. And sometimes what we're sacrificing is something exciting, and having the experience of boredom is, to me, sometimes one of the most badass sacrifices that you can possibly give.
Yeah, the discipline is the most difficult. That is the dragon in my basement as of now. It's like, it's something I've never really felt like I had going on strongly, and a big part of it is, are you familiar with the idea of the dopamine detox?
We just talked about that a little bit ago.
Doing nothing interesting.
Yeah. So
on purpose.
Mm-hmm. So like putting the phone down, putting the computers down.
Oh well, yeah, but like, okay, but particularly, I've heard of like going to extremities of like several days where you don't do anything that causes neurochemical excitement. Okay. So no video games, no phoning, even like try to avoid excitement. And the idea is, and I don't know if I like how much objectivity there is to this, but it seems to me like it's something that I need sometimes, is like get yourself so zeroed out that those things that you experience as boring are like something. Mm-hmm. So you get that feeling of that will have you doing something for hours. The things that make the time like pass really fast. I want to get back into that with writing. It's been so hard for me. I haven't really written in a long time, anything but like songs and things. I just don't know long form writing, and the thing is, I go to do it, and I'm like, I could have a conversation. I could do this. I could do this. Feels so much more natural to me. A lot of the time, to be honest, this one's been a struggle for some reason. I fucking feel irritated. maybe it's just stuff going on in my life. That's why I ask, does anxiety always come from somewhere? Does irritability always come from somewhere, or is it just?
So I think a lot of times it does, that there on some level there's something important to us. So typically when we get caught up in something, it's because we're fighting the very emotion that we're having, and we're viewing the emotion as being the problem. So if we don't like anxiety, and we think anxiety is dangerous, we're going to start going, is this making me anxious? And then if we notice it and we already feel that it's dangerous, what are we going to feel? We're going to feel more anxiety. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if we don't like criticism, then we're going to look for criticism everywhere. If we don't like rejection, we're going to look for rejection everywhere. If we don't like not knowing things, we're going to start to notice our ignorance. And the more that we focus on what we don't want, the more we get caught up in that area of life. And this is the problem with so much of, I think, psychotherapy, like the old school psychotherapy was about getting rid of those things somehow, right? This idea that those are bad or wrong, and then when that happens, you kick it in more and more. Whereas the idea here is if you can focus instead on what you value, what you want to build, what you want to be about, then it's easier to move past those things. So I actually read a quote from Marcus Aurelius today, and I'm probably going to butcher it a little bit, but it says, "Are your cucumbers sour? Throw them away. Are there brambles in your path? Go around them. Don't get caught up in asking why. Just continue on with your path." Right? So when we have this anxiety, as soon as we identify why it's there, then we can do something about it. And a lot of times when we're anxious about something, it's because we're afraid that if we allow that feeling to stay, or if we follow that path, that we're going to have more of that feeling. Like somehow that feeling shouldn't be there. But that's not the case. Like I use this as an example. Imagine that if you were walking down the road and you bumped into some old woman with a crooked nose and a hunchback. She's like, I curse you, and that whenever you see the color blue, it means there's something horribly wrong with you and horribly wrong in the world. And sure enough, you look up and you see the sky, and then there's a car accident down the road, and you're like, holy shit, I'm cursed. I can't see the color blue. How would you go through the world? What would you start to do if you literally believed that the color blue was cursed? Like, what would happen in that very moment where you believe that the color blue was cursed?
There'd be curses in the sky.
What would you start to do with your attention? How would you start to walk down wherever you were going when you continued on?
Either avoidant or perceiving threats everywhere.
Both, probably, right? So on one hand, you'd be looking everywhere for the color blue because you're afraid that it's going to be there. And as soon as you see it, you look away. And what happens to your life when you're always trying to avoid this color?
Avoiding that there is a malaise of worry and sadness, and oh shit, we fucked up and we got to pull this truck out of the muck. And on the large collective scale is. I don't know. There's some folks that I would suggest a little bit of it too, to not be letting it weigh you down so much. But.
Right, but here's the thing: in that whenever you experience something bad, I bet there's going to be the color blue around somewhere, and so that's going to start to prove to you that color is part of the problem, right?
Oh, you making associations that aren't always associated with the actual source of the problem.
You got it. And
that's going on a lot.
So the idea here is that when we're trying to avoid, there's that woman didn't curse us, but we can do that. We can pretend that there's somehow, because if you have working color vision, you're going to see every color that is during that week. And if you have a working limbic system, you have a working emotional mind, you're going to experience every emotion that there is in that week. But if there's a few of them that you feel are cursed, what's going to happen? That you can't have, that are wrong to have, that are bad to have.
Is there I think there's something to be said of now when we get back to our safe places, to our houses, if we are so lucky to have a place to go to be alone and relatively safe, because there's meteors and comments and aneurysm. There's things that could always happen, but you get to the place where you're out of the hustle and bustle of the world, and it's not really being presented that there's anything going on that's new or difficult. Duncan Trussell said some poor phoneless fuck is just sitting by a waterfall somewhere, completely unaware of that we're all supposed to be so afraid. So that there's times where I'm like, I'm not doing enough to root and ground myself in the reality of the world. And then there's times where it's like, I should really dial my reality down to something super local, maybe as local as the room I'm in. Mm-hmm. Because I think that if we spend too much time in it feels very ungrounded to be spending too much time thinking about geopolitics or even just your state, the state of your state.
So here, how can we do both? Because here's the thing: when we if you have a passion about geopolitics, then why not act on that in the moment? And if you have a passion about being a creator and you notice that part of the reason why you do it is for validation or attention, what if you accept that? But you go, okay, that's there, but what is it that I want to recreate, whether I'm going to succeed or fail? And how do I make it consistent? And here's the other point: what's getting in the way of that consistency? So kind of let's ask that right now. So if you know that part of why you want to create is about attention and it's about validation, which is, I think, why a lot of people want to create. I think it's kind of a natural human instinct. But part of you actually wants to build something that's going to make a difference. What gets in the way of that consistency for you? Like what wall or weight is either stopping you or weighing you down?
In the past, it's been a lot of this thing, and I notice I judge this in others. This is very much like people are. You judge most. What is
do
a problem with you, or something that is unintegrated about yourself. Whatever ways to say it is a big obstacle for me. Used to be is that I identified as a person with special needs and a particular brain that was incapable of certain things that were easy to other people. I used to think I was not able to drive a car. There was no way that I was ever going to do anything that is like mathematical left brain. That whole part of my physical brain, I thought, was just not there in the way that some other. And when I would make the excuse like, "All right, well, write a song, right? I want the song on my desk in an hour." It's like, you're not gonna. I could do that immediately. There are things that you do, and I would get in that fighting stance, and it's
so that is the curse of talent. Is that it makes the things that you have to work for feel like they're deficits. And I had this, it's uncanny how similar you and I are in those things. I was really good verbally. I was really good creatively. I was really fast and sometimes clever with those things when I was young. And therefore I thought that my spelling and my math and my ability to be persistent were horrible. And I am such a bad speller. Like if spell check did not exist, I probably would have never made it through grad school. And it's embarrassing how bad my spelling is to this day because my brain doesn't work that way. Foreign languages, no good. Math, I thought I was horrible at for years until I had to master it for a stats class. And I realized I had learned through working with other people that if I applied myself and I just went through the discomfort of not being good and being slow with a skill set that I'm used to being fast with, that I all of a sudden could get better. It was just tedious and painful.
That's
and then what I did was I chose what I call a meta value. And my meta value is challenge. So our values are those things that are most important to us that we want to build, be about, and cultivate. And I found that finding meta values, like values about my values, for me, challenge. So when it comes to math, all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, you're not just smart because you're quick and it comes easily to you. That's talent. The ability to develop intelligence through consistent effort, that's hard and that's uncommon. And I use that as a challenge to make myself better at math. And in order to do that, I had to tolerate my lack of attention to detail, constant mistakes, and that dealing with boredom. And when I got done with that, I felt like such a fucking badass because I came out of a grad level advanced stats class with an A and I'm like, fuck yeah, I got this done. And my old self never believed that was possible. And it really taught me something about what it means to find challenge, to overcome, to be able to make room for, and to take boredom with me when doing something like that.
Yeah. Our mutual friend Boz, you know Boz.
No, Boz?
Great guy. Talks about the innovator and the integrator. The visionary and the integrator.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've always thought of myself as, visionary. Like those, like there is no lack of inspiration and like just waves of eureka moments constantly. And but I have definitely had a difficult time, and at times was leaning into I'm not the one who integrates. I'm not the one who grounds things, who brings things into translatable space where they then exist, where others can appreciate them. And so he talks about it as you have your visionary and you have your integrator. Then they're two separate people. But I've been really trying to see there's a part of me that can be the integrator. Or maybe maybe I've even been thinking about there's a day of the week that I call that's integrating day. Like on this day, I'm gonna just really lean into the things that are objective, that are fucking here, that are largely physical. Just taking an idea from a magical thing in my head that's in the ether to paper or to being recorded, to bring it into the world, to birth ideas, because they can be very, very different skills and very, very different efforts.
Very much so. And I think that, so again, what keeps you from being the integrator? What are the feelings that you just don't want or that feel hopeless? Because I think this is where grounding happens. When you find that emotion or that thought or that belief that goes, oh, this is unacceptable, I can't have it, that's the area of your life that you can't ground in. And if you can't ground there, it's hard to do the work that moves you through it.
Yeah. So find exactly the things that are most uncomfortable. I often think this time would be spent so much better doing the thing that I am lightning fast at, and and skilled and talented, and comes to me easy and is enjoyable. And I might spend 4 hours here, and I have a lot of this. I don't think this is good. Actually, I have another thing where I will just spend 4 agonizing hours doing something that somebody else could have been like, okay.
And to me, that's the fucking mundane badassery.
Yeah.
That is the being present, the grounding, where that change happens. Because the change only happens when you're present with that discomfort. And to me, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where someone is truly... So when we talk about purposeful action, the way I kind of view things is kind of like we're an interconnected web of habits. And the reason why you can't just wake up and decide, tomorrow, I'm going to wake up every day and I'm going to work out for an hour and a half starting at 5 in the morning and then just do it. Like almost no human being on earth, unless they've already been doing that, can make that decision. And here's why. That when we make a new decision, free will isn't just taking this pop can and moving it from here to here. Yeah, that's free will. But I have no habits in my life that make it difficult to do that. If I want to work out every day, I have habits about how I think about effort. I have habits about how I think about what it means to get up early. I have other things that I value, like spending time with my friends and doing my work and doing art. So if all of a sudden I'm making another hour and a half for something else, I've got to shift all of those priorities. And so when we take this, it's not like a change where we can just take one of those lines and change it a sharp angle. All of these habits are interconnected. So it takes daily presence and consistent effort with making room for that discomfort and that uncertainty and that awkwardness and that tediousness to be able to shape those new habits. And after a while, it's going to be hard to go back to the way you were. You're going to have to shape those habits again. So for me, after I got done with grad school, I started working out really hard, and I didn't know I had an autoimmune issue at the time, but my knees flared up. I thought I had arthritis, but I realized from teaching martial arts that unless I worked out, my knees were going to get worse and worse. So I started by going up 2 flights of stairs at my work every day. And then I would take the elevator the other 12 flights, and that was kind of embarrassing. And then I would go and I would skip it the next day because my mind would make an excuse, and that's one of those old habits. Oh, you're late, so just take the elevator. But then the next day I'd like, fuck it. I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to take 4 flights, do that for a week. And at this point, I do pretty much 14 flights every day when I go into work. And it's actually hard for me to force myself to take the elevator, not just because of COVID, but because now I am so addicted to the challenge of going up those stairs and my knees feel so much better. But I had to be present with that discomfort and that awkwardness and the silliness of taking 2 flights and then walking over the elevator and taking it the rest of the way. Like that was really hard for me to do. But I think that's where purposeful action allows us to reshape and resculpt our life and to build a new set of habits that are more in line with who we want to be.
And it's profoundly difficult.
Oh, it is.
Because it's important. I mean, the most important, I'm coming to appreciate that more and more. Like, aren't these things that are such great treasures that I think await as soon as, the achievement is unlocked. Like, shouldn't that be really difficult? Shouldn't that like almost seem impossible at times to the point? Because then it's definitely free will. Like that's the most free will seeming. I know there's folks who always want to argue that free will is an illusion going on, but like it really feels like an experience of free will when something's fucking difficult and you still.
But that's the thing. That's where the studies go. They actually did studies that show that you make a decision in most instances milliseconds before you consciously make a decision. Well, here's the thing. We are literally an interconnected web of habits. So it makes sense that our body has designed itself. The reason why we act out a habit so much is if we were perfectly mindful, our brains would have to be like 1,000,000 infinite times more powerful than they are now because there is an infinite amount of stimulus within us and outside of us. So you can't be so mindful that you are somehow pumping your heart and breathing your breath and adjusting your posture and contemplating the movement of the spheres and talking to your friend Sal all at the same time in a fully conscious and present way, that our purposeful action, our mindfulness is supported by the interconnected web of habits. So this is where I make the distinction between free will and earned will. So when it comes to where I place this can, that's a really easy thing that makes it appear like I have free will. But if I want to change the beverage that I drink and I drink this every day, that is going to take a bit of effort on my part. I'm going to have to use earned will to change that habit, right? And and the only place we can do that is by being present. And that means that we have to know how to deal with whatever has been keeping us from the present moment. And we can only face that again by being present.
I need a bloody vacation. I need to go somewhere unfamiliar for a bit. I feel that would really help with my momentum of certain habits and lazy momentums. Because being present when you're in travel is a psychedelic enterprise,
right? Because there are certain things that pull you into the present moment. Novelty being one of them. So when you're somewhere new, how does everything around you seem?
Either exciting or scary.
Right. Because all of a sudden you're being pulled so that your awareness is out in your 5 senses, and you're picking up all of this information like it's brand new. And what happens is we have a piece of our brain at our brainstem called the reticular activating system, and its whole purpose is to filter out most of the world most of the time, because what it's concerned about are the things that you want to eat or the things that are going to eat you. And so if you're walking through the jungle and you've been through that jungle 1,000,000 times, it's looking for the snakes and the tigers and for the berries and for the edible mushrooms, or the mushrooms for entertainment. And everything else kind of falls into the background. But when you go on vacation, when you go somewhere new, that reticular activating system doesn't know what to filter out. So everything seems vivid. And this is why I love fire spinning, martial arts, and mountain biking, because those are all things that pull me into the present moment. So as much as I practice mindfulness and grounding, it's really enjoyable to do somewhat dangerous, risky things that cause my reticular activating system to go, we need to pay attention to all of this. I'm going to pull you here without you trying to be here because this is dangerous.
Again, I will mention the metaphor and reality of my learning a manual shifting stick shift vehicle. I thought for several years, and then I had an accident that like confirmed it to me that like Zachary shouldn't drive. Zachary can't pay attention.
Right.
I would be driving and remember that I'm driving and like have that thing of like whoa, and I would just. It was almost every time I would go driving, there would be a moment where I was being, honked at and like reminded by the other motorists, hey, we're doing a thing. There's lives at risk. And it was like, and I try to be as careful as, and it was just, but it was like, my brain is not set up for this single point focus. But having the manual shift, it requires so much of me to do it. Mm-hmm. It's like, I no longer feel this way about it because I am force. And I'm trying to implement that in my life as much as possible. What are ways to keep myself grounded by like tyrannical, objective conditions that I set up by my own free will to kind of deprive me of free will to be lazy tomorrow.
Right. No, I think that's a beautiful way to do it. Like this is the whole thing about getting people to go running with you, right? If you feel obligated to people to be present, you're gonna do that more often. If you put yourself, this is why some people join martial arts. It's why some people join CrossFit. It's why some people join the military, right? You're surrounded by these people that are going to be like, you must develop this discipline, and that can be a help for a time. So how do you do that? How do you kind of force yourself into that situation?
Other people is the best way to have an obligation. And even, it's, if it's somebody who knows me too well or somebody who would be forgiving if I flaked, then sometimes that doesn't work. But I will not stand somebody up who is like, actually gonna be either upset or just that I don't want to let down. So that's another way is to set up a meeting, put something on the calendar where I'm expected, and then sometimes I'll do time management very weirdly and like arrive in a tumble and have a period of time where I'm really frantic to get there, but I will arrive. God damn it. As where when I just have little pacts with myself, man, I don't know. I think my success rate is well under 30% with these little pacts that I make with just me.
I don't think that's uncommon.
Yeah, it's because it's like, okay, now it's 7 a.m. and you said you were going to do the thing. Yeah, but who the fuck was that? Me yesterday? Fuck that guy. No, like I've got the plans have changed. New shit has come to light.
Right. So how do you? So when you do it, that 30% of the time that you do it, how do you do it? Like what pushes you through? What is the thing that kind of gets you to be present and to move forward with that?
Yeah, social consequences is one of them.
How about when other people aren't involved? How about it's just you and you?
When does it actually happen? Yeah. I don't know, momentum is really the only way. Yeah, like I can with exercise, I can develop a healthy addiction where if I don't press out this much a day, then I'm not going to be able to sleep. And I love to actually be able to sleep. I didn't actually sleep last night. That's the yawning. Yeah, for something I just didn't use enough energy throughout the day, and if I do that, then I pay for it at night. So that to be reminded of that it's like if I don't do the thing where I really exert myself through physical exercise, that there's both something to be running away from, there's a negative to avoid, and a positive to seek. The positive to seek is like that real sleep, like laying down, wanting and falling asleep quickly, and that's one of the greatest things on earth. And on the other side, like writhing around, knowing that I got to be up soon and failing to sleep. It's one of the most uncomfortable things.
And again, like I don't feel like, because I never had the thing with driving. In fact, I love driving, but in so many ways, I have a lot of the distracted tendencies you have. And for me, I have so much energy in me that if I don't purposely slow down at night for like 2 hours before I'm supposed to go to bed, chances are it's going to take me like a good hour to go to sleep. And I've gotten much better at this. So now, like today, like these days, as long as I wind down before I go to bed, I can pretty much fall asleep consistently unless there's something really important on my mind. But what I found is, again, it comes back to that grounding. And one of the best ways to ground is I'll sit and do mindfulness, but for the first 5 minutes of it, I'll write down the headlines of my thoughts. And by writing down the headlines, it is telling me what's either repetitious, what keeps coming up in my mind again and again, or it tells me what is coming with a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
And so when I notice that, I write it down. And then once it's on paper, it's easier for me to let it go through my mind when I'm meditating. But then what I always do, and I'm kind of letting my mind know that I've got its back. I promise myself that I'm going to come back to those headlines. And then what I do is I either do it. So it's something I can do right then, I'll do it. If it's something I can schedule, but I can't do right now, or it's not the right time to, I'll schedule it. And if it's something that I can't actually do without undue effort, or it's just something that's uncontrollable, then I accept it. And it's amazing how much that can clear my mind because I've trained my mind to know if I schedule it, I'm going to do it. If I can do it, I've done it. And if I can't do anything about it, then I'm like, hey, mind, like, honestly, I know you're really have your heart set on us like traveling to New Zealand tomorrow, but we don't have a way to do that. My mind's like, oh, I guess you're right. And it's able to let it go a little better.
Well, it's some things you got to chip away at. When you first said that, to be honest, when you first said it about the thing about writing down that your headline thoughts, that immediately gave me a feeling of discomfort if I were to try to do that right now, honestly.
Right.
And that says to me that it's like, so this is how grounding isn't always like being one with problems or, being in the room with your problems. Sometimes it's grounding into the fact that it's like, whoa, there's actual peace.
Right.
There's
really fucking enjoying this.
This is really about this is a peaceful moment. I'm here and those the noise of the world actually isn't affecting me in this room. But sometimes there is a thing, and I noticed about this right now. The things that are bugging me are if I wrote those down on paper, I feel like I want to avoid that. But if I do, then I guess what I would do next that my mind has that I got my mind's back. That helps because it's like what I've realized now is that it's like my mind doesn't require me to like, quote unquote, fix the problem, just to feel that the comfort of that, okay, there's progress,
right?
Or that there's just some sincere effort. We're doing something. It's almost like, okay, I'm going to stop flooding you with irritation about this because I know that you're on the case. I'm trying to get you to look at it.
Right. And so I think this is a great example that sometimes being present is what's really hard. I mean, we have a guy, I haven't read all of his comments, but he seems a little judgmental or critical of what we're doing here. But I think that a year or two ago, that would be like something that would really catch me up. And to be present with it and to be here with it is like, of course we don't like judgment. Of course we don't like rejection. And it feels really personal when it's there. But here's the thing, like when you're present with it and here's another a phrase that's really useful is this idea of relaxing around your discomfort. So if I'm here and I think about someone like maybe misinterpreting what I'm saying or actually feeling like, hey, like it's not good for them. Well, it's allowed not to be good for them. Like that's okay. I used to think that if I was saying something or doing something or presenting something and someone didn't like it, like somehow that was the worst thing that could possibly happen. And what I realize is when you understand what your values are, and you really know what's important to you, you start to realize that not everybody shares your values. Not everybody shows your background or beliefs. So of course, if you're putting yourself out there publicly, of course, some people are going to ignore you. Of course, some people are going to mock you. Of course, some people are going to judge you because they have different values. They have a different background. And that's just how people are. There's certain people who I judge and I ignore. And because their values are so different from me, I'm like, well, that you shouldn't do that. That's not good. Or I'm like, well, they're going to do that and I'm just going to let them be because there's only so much time and energy in the world for things. And so while these things are unpleasant, it doesn't mean you can't relax around them because otherwise you get so caught up in not having a natural experience, which is someone judging you, rejecting you, that you stop doing what it is you want to be doing. And to me, that would be the real tragedy, is to not keep creating, not keep expressing, not keep exploring based on who you really are, just because somebody else is different from you,
Yeah, those are things that I do just avoid. And, I avoid, maybe not the word, the subtle art of not giving a fuck. I really am... that our social dilemma documentary and other things, like I have a really intense self-defense of my attention now, and I see that both digitally, media, electronically, and with people, where it's like, you're gonna get me to zero in on you, and it's like, no.
Right.
No, my time is really, really precious, and the things that make me feel really emotional and intense about that is that it's like, this is time that I could spend, with relationships that I want to strengthen. This is time that I could spend like learning a skill. This is time that I could spend doing things that I enjoy, that I only have a finite amount of time on this earth to do. And you're gonna take it with me thinking about and maybe even looking at or talking to you. No.
Right. And I've kind of wanted to write the book after reading that one, The Subtler Art of Giving a Fuck.
Yeah.
Which, and I'm not just meaning that as something clever, like literally something that I found is like, I really care about people. And when I went through something where I was in a disagreement with, or I think more so certain people were in a disagreement with how I was being portrayed or people's ideas of me, the advice other people gave me was, well, if these people don't understand you, fuck them, they weren't really your friend. Or, well, just be non-attached. And I'm like, well, that didn't feel authentic to me, because just because someone misunderstood me or had a judgment to me did not change how I felt about them. I still loved them. I still admired them. I still respected them and cared about them, depending on who they were and how I felt. So what I had to learn how to do was still care. I don't want to be in the present moment by saying, well, you don't like me, F you, and you don't understand me, F you. I want to go, well, I love you and I respect you, and you clearly have your ideas over here. I don't want to fight you. I don't want to ignore you, but I don't want to get caught up in whatever this is, and you don't seem to want to change. So how can I care about you and just be open to being loving and respectful and still go on about my life? And it's kind of like yes and, right? I think you can care. And for me, it was the concept of, a lot of times in meditation and psychedelics, you talk about ego death, which is where your own sense of self is dissolved or destroyed. I've experienced ego death through meditation, but I was still affected by this. I think for me, it was reputational death. And it was that fear that if people judged or disliked what I was saying before I said it, and part of what I value in the world is saying things that will help people, that I was afraid that maybe I could, or creating with people, that I couldn't create with or help people. But when I was able to make room for, okay, I still care about and respect this person, and not everybody's going to get me or understand me all the time, I can still care about them and create. And if they ever came to me in a situation where they needed help, I could still help them or have fun with them or share something with them. I still have that. But I had to let go of the fear that my reputation needed to be perfect in order for me to keep doing things in the world. And for me, at least, I think that was my big fear of criticism, that within like really just the last 6 to 9 months has really changed for me.
Yeah, I'm drawn in my circle a lot. I've like, if I'm gonna get really grounded and associated with my associations, then I'm gonna need to get real good at boundaries and curate that circle of like, okay, this I could write down those names, and it's not going to be as big of a number as it used to be, and it's like, and I've got some criteria that are how much I'm willing to be associated with someone emotionally, socially, relationship wise, who's gonna come at me with expectations and needs often. Or not necessarily the frequency, the intensity, without the regard for the fact that I'm a fucking that I need to crumble sometimes, or I just can't handle that all the time, and I think I'm more aware of where my red line is and where I start getting really walled off and will intentionally appear as cold-hearted because I don't want someone to expect warmth or regard from me. And I've experimented with a lot of different ways of being, but what I would like to be is really grounded in a reality that is not going to be like perfectly neatly curated, but I want to be honest with myself about what sort of a community tribe, like what, it's not a number, but like what I can handle and who I could be really present for, and just accept that this idea, that the thought that I used to have, or at least how I was acting, is like, I'm just going to go out in the world, just beat me everywhere, and just as big as that, vortex of humanity and associations gets, I'm just going to, do what I can, for that web. And because the reality of that comes is you end up having really insincere and confusing relationships with a few that sometimes you just have to shut down. This thing where we have all of these people have vistas to communicate with, particularly with the Facebook, like that's not healthy. That's not normal. It's not possible to do that thoroughly.
Well, and that's the challenge with, I think that, what we're doing here is we're being public, and that opens people up to all sorts of information and criticisms and interactions that you wouldn't have naturally. And I think that this is really important to understand, is that again, when you're expressing yourself in the world based on what you care about and stand for, people are going to react to that. But I think that on the flip side, what you're saying is that it's so important to have those people in the life that do share your values, are present with you, understand that friendship is about mutual exchange and mutual respect and mutual support, and that you guys can really talk and be playful and serious and be there when each other hurt, but also be there to support each other and to have fun together. Like those real, deep, complex human relationships, I think, make everything else easier. And once you know that those connections are real, it maybe makes these other things easier. It makes these public or these larger conversations that I also think are important, it makes them easier, because you know that there's these other souls out there that you get and they get you. And I think that's one of the most powerful things to be present with is people in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not sure how that looks like. I don't know. I think I can admit to myself that I am in a stage, and the world is, of reorchestrating to get, there was a lot of stuff that was going on in my personal life and in geopolitics and just like the systems and structures of society, and also just our like immediate, that were very of reflex and just had a momentum and were based on, this is what we've been doing, so this is what we do. And then there was this hard reset with the quarantine, and then there's the coming back, and now realizing that there's a whole bunch, I think, that I need to recalibrate about my life and self to get to what I want more than anything now. I want to be, I want to feel fully engaged whilst also at peace.
So I was reading an article today that kind of touches on what you're talking about, and I shared it with you as a Twitter post, and it was about the club owner in New York that realized comedians were getting ripped off by most clubs. So he started this one in the basement of a restaurant. And his agreement with the restaurant owner is like, hey, you keep the food and drink, and I'll keep the proceeds for the door. And then he made sure the comedians got the best food, and he paid them real money. And he ended up having Jon Stewart come in, and Bill Maher, and I think it was Ray Romano came in. And with each of them, this little Twitter feed talked about how he helped each one of them notice their uniqueness and notice how they were getting stuck. And Jon Stewart said something where he goes, I would go in there and I'd tell these jokes, and it would be like I'd be the last person on. So it was like the cleaning guy getting ready to clean up for the night, and the one drunk who'd passed out in the corner, and he would just mumble some abuse at me. and I had to get used to, hey, I could make the cleaning guy laugh. And this is where I learned not to fall in love with my audience, that began to find my own internal barometer of what it meant to be me. And when that resonated with me and that worked, and then that meant that I was going to find my particular audience, and having faith in that. And that really struck me, because this club owner told Jon Stewart, hey, you are not a medium for your jokes. Your jokes are a medium for your expression. And I think that's something that always comes through with Jon Stewart, is he's being himself when he's up there, which is why I think he kind of had the career that he did. And so that's a grounding and a presence that I think is really something powerful to find.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you write there on the?
Oh, and yeah, this is kind of a summary of what the club owner had kind of his kind of blanket advice was to deeply and consciously know and trust what makes you different. And I would add to kind of ground in that.
Yeah. I mean, there's I understand more than I used to when I was very much rebellious for the sake of rebellious. I'm gonna be weird because it feels cool and edgy to be different. And then I started realizing, like, actually, with my best efforts to be normal and fit in, that's actually where the true weirdness of me
Right.
is most apparent, because it's like, wow, I'm really making my effort because I do understand now the comfort of collectivism, of feeling part of a greater group, and being just comfortable to go with the currents. And I fail at that often.
Right, but I think that's part of it, is how do you be present with that awkwardness? How do you be present with that natural humanity that you have? Because that's the hard thing about being present, is like there's always something about us that we don't like or we don't want, either in our mind or in our appearance, and this is universal. And as someone who both was a martial artist who worked with dozens and dozens of people, a teacher of academia where my students come and talk to me, as a clinical psychologist and a friend with lots of people, one thing I see over and over again is two big things. One, everybody thinks that their pain is unique and unknowable, and it really isn't. That most people's pain is something I see mirrored in so many other people, maybe not in that exact way, but it's there. And it's this sense that somehow everybody has this little sense that there's something wrong with them, which again is so universal. And I think that this is part of what we need to relax around in order to really be present and be ourselves, is our awkwardness and our pain and imperfections, because that's the only way that we can be present with our talents and our skills and our unique charm, which also each person has in their own way.
Yeah, and how to steer the vehicle. It's good to know that it favors to the left,
Right.
And yeah, it's when you're driving somebody's car, it's like, is there anything I should know about this one? This is the same thing with myself. It's like, yeah, it's like there's things that I'm aware of me that allow me to pilot this situation.
So yeah, and I think that what you just mentioned here, you mentioned that kind of difficulty with collectivism. I think that's maybe a good segue into our next episode. Yes. And because I think we've really I think we had a kind of good conversation here about what it means to be grounded, what it means to be present, and how that's kind of like mindfulness. But I really prefer the term grounded, because I think mindfulness has been so misused. But really, I think that, how would you sum up what we talked about today?
Well, there's the thing that I didn't get to, which is the opposite. That sometimes I think that I experience those who could use the opposite of groundedness for a bit to get out of their problems and their stories and and some of the realities. Like, sometimes you need a fucking break from reality. Too much of that is called escapism. Enough of that can be therapeutic and helpful.
Right.
I'd spend too much time in space cadet land in the last decade, and now I need grounding. But yeah, I would say the biggest thing for me that I think is a very important tool for this time, when there's so much disturbing noise going on on the large scale, and certainly in the media and the arenas of politics and stuff, where it's like sometimes it's so good to be able to have the mechanism to get in the room that you're in, and to know that we're just here,
Right.
And that grounding can be peace.
And it can be, I think, excitement, and it can be tedious, but it's the only place that life happens. And to me, that if we're always seeking peace, that means that we're kind of, in a way, trying to get rid of that anxiety, or get away from it, or get away from that depression. And I think sometimes we just need to be present with that pain and discomfort. But here's the thing: just because I'm in pain doesn't mean I can't also be happy. And just because I'm in discomfort doesn't also mean that I can't be appreciating something across the room or having amazing food. And I think this is one of the most important secrets to being present, is that it isn't always peace, but it can be meaningful, and it can be fun, and it can be us doing something satisfying and challenging. I think life has a lot to offer in the moment, and peace is just one of those things.
Yeah, I don't mean necessarily peace as in Zen. Maybe actually that's what I mean, more Zen. But there's times where it can be fucking chaos. I can be in a room where the chaos is happening. It's
like
just
in that mosh pit, like in the middle of the pit.
And there's times where I just synergize all the chaos, and I just love the skin I'm in and the horror story of the world, and it's just like this is why we're here.
Just like engaged in the visceral insanity that is the world, and that is not peace, but there is kind of a peace in that kind of dynamic aliveness, in a sense.
Yeah, which is what I just don't want to have is the oh, why are we here? This is wrong, sort of thing, or the avoidant, because that's just always a failure for me to avoid. I never get far from.
But I guess that's the thing, is that we got that part of us that naturally does that. We avoid for a reason. It's just a matter of how do we make room for that part of ourselves too, which is kind of a paradox, which is kind of fitting.
That's a big paradox. Wow, how do can I be Zen about my own avoidance? Can I be grounded in in my mechanism to be ungrounded, to have a problem with grounding?
I think perfect. So what is it we're gonna tackle next time, and who are we planning to have on with us?
2 Thursdays from now, we are going to talk with Chris Orozco about individualism versus collectivism.
And who is Chris?
Chris Orozco is a shadow integration coach.
And what is shadow integration?
Shadow integration is what are the parts of yourself that you hide from yourself and your awareness, to integrate those, to become familiar with the parts of you that you that are in the shadows, or that feel shadowy to you.
Those things you might say that you would like to avoid or fight.
Yes, and then there's collective. There's integrating the collective shadow, which is accepting the things in the world that are dark and spooky or downright fucking heinous, and somehow. You do this work where at some point you've synergized and integrated that, and it's like, okay, I stand in that world and in that reality, and it's not like I'm okay with these things. More so on the collective side, it's like I'm not saying that I am all right with that, but all right, this is where I am. I guess it is kind of there's similarities to the act of grounding, but it's like. With the self, that's very, very that's been mostly what I've done with this epoch, this era of pandemia, is, man, if I've been shadow working, integrating. So yeah, we'll be talking with Chris Orozco, who is an aficionado of that, and one who says that his knee jerk is to value individualism over collectivism, and I come from a series of years where I would have said that I was more knee-jerkingly collectivist, and how do we take care of others, and now am finding my right wing a little bit more, some would say.
And I would say that I also had been originally individualist, and I was a libertarian business owner. I thought I pulled myself by my own bootstraps. And when I discovered the community that we're both a part of, I became much more collectivist, and I understood what it meant to be part of an interconnected group of people who were creative and generally open and wanting to work together. And kind of like you, I'm kind of finding, I think, a good balance between the two, where I'm seeing the value of that individualistic side and the value of that connection to other people. So we're going to talk about what it is to be either or both.
Yeah, and then it doesn't need to be dichotomized. It doesn't need to be versus. I'm finding more and more that what is good for the collective is so good for the individual.
And I think one of the concepts that you and I have been talking about a lot is this idea of dynamic range, that are circumstances where being super individualist is really important, and there's times where caring about all the people around you is super important, but ideally the well-adjusted human being should be able to do both, and figure out how to be in that different place, in that spectrum.
Becoming your best individual is, I find, the best thing you can do for your community.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, good talking today, and thank you all, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Cheers.
Take care, everybody.